Time for the newspapers now on the programme. Alison, is starting today in Italy. The papers there are mourning the death of their ambassador to the Democratic Republic of Congo, killed in an attempted kidnapping.
That's right. Luca Attanasio was killed when his humanitarian convoy was attacked outside of Goma in the east of the country. His Congolese driver and Italian bodyguard were also killed. La Stampa writes that Luca Attanasio and police officer Vittorio Acavacchi were the best of Italy. Italian media are also paying tribute to that driver, Mustafa Malambo, who worked for the UN's World Food Program. Website The Post Internazionale reports that he often spoke out on social media against violence from rebel and extremist groups. The paper Repubblica writes that the best way to honor all of their memories is to, quote, not look away from forgotten wars, but to offer DR Congo and other African countries more support for their development and for their security.
And in fact, tackling the DRC security issues, crisis, was one of the promises, wasn't it, of the country's president?
That's right. This attack should remind Felix Tshisekedi of the commitment that he made to make security a priority. That's according to the Ghanaian website, Lejeli. The site says he has been slow to honor that commitment, too busy working to, quote, free himself from forced marriage with former President Joseph Kabila. The Jelly writes that this attack is a snub to both Tshisekedi and the UN's MONUSCO mission. They describe it as one of the largest United Nations contingents in the world, which, quote, swallows up energy and money for a rather mixed result.
Let's go to the Middle East for this next story. Questions there really abounding over that massive oil spill. We mentioned it yesterday along the Israeli coast. It's impressive, this, isn't it?
That's right. And Israeli authorities are investigating what could have caused the spill. And as we read on the front page of Haaretz, they have issued a gag order on that investigation. The paper explains that it bars the press from publishing any details about the investigation, including anything that could identify the vessels involved. The Environmental Protection Ministry told Haaretz that it's because publication could, quote, harm a complex investigation with international aspects. But there are concerns about information being hidden from the public, and Haaretz is one of several media outlets that has requested that that gag order be either canceled or reduced. Meanwhile, Lebanese paper L'Orient Le Jour reports that the black tide has now reached a nature reserve on the shores of southern Lebanon. As you said, Stuart, impressive how wide this is reaching. The paper writes that the Tyr Reserve was once one of the least polluted sites in Lebanon. Now it's been invaded, the paper says, by tar-like globs, threatening both its beauty and its biodiversity. And cleanup, the paper says, is going to be long because authorities in Lebanon lack the equipment and the funding.
Algeria for this next story. The papers there reacting to Monday's mass demonstrations for the 2-year anniversary of the Hirak protest movement.
That's right. Algerian paper Liberté is talking about a second wave on their front page today that proves that this movement's work is not yet done. The paper writes, with legendary pacifism, Algerians continue to show with force their desire for democratic change. Meanwhile, a cartoon from the cartoonist Hic shows the Mars rover crowd surfing on the masses of protesters. The title is Impressive Images, not from Mars, which has been crossed out, but from February, a pun that works in French because Mars in French is, of course, planet, but also means the month of March.
Very cleverly done. The French paper Libération is also mentioning Algeria protests on its front page. But let's be honest, Alison, it's mostly devoted, isn't it, to the breakup of the electronic duo Daft Punk.
It certainly is, Stuart. This is a front page that kind of makes you feel like maybe they changed it at the last minute when that news about Daft Punk came in. Their headline about Algeria down at the bottom even cites a Daft Punk lyric, One More Time. Meanwhile, talking about the group, the paper uses a pun that I'm going to try and explain. They say, on se lève et on se casque, which means we stand up and put our helmets on. Usually, though, it's on se casse, which would mean we stand up and we leave. Here, though, it's casque, which means helmet, because, of course, Daft Punk are famous for their helmets. So basically, as I said to you before, Stuart, it's a bit of a Daft Punk, you could say. Thanks.
Very good.
Anyway, if you want to see the duo without their casque, without their helmets, you can check out 20 Minutes today. This article is about one of the first major Daft Punk performances at a music festival in Rennes in 1995. 20 Minutes nostalgically writes, we barely knew them. They had just begun their career that would last 28 years and make them one of the most famous electro groups on the planet.
Very impressive stuff. He has to hide his face, isn't it? It's behind the hair there. Finally, a quick word about two German beach volleyball players. Now, they're actually boycotting a tournament which is being held next month in Qatar, aren't they?
They are, Stuart, and the reason for this is that these are female beach volleyball players, and they are being banned from wearing bikinis, which is, if you've ever watched beach volleyball, is usually what the players wear.
You have to wear a suit of armour instead.
Yeah, right. Not quite. They're being asked to wear T-shirts and long pants out of respect for the host country's culture and traditions. According to Le Figaro, the players said, look, normally they'd be happy to adapt, but Qatar's extreme heat really makes the bikinis especially necessary in this case. They say what's not necessary is choosing Qatar to host the tournament, and I have to maybe agree with them. It seems like a strange choice.
Incredibly hot, isn't it? A bit like the World Cup, of course, which is coming up as well. Alison, thanks very much. Alison Sargent with the papers on France 24.